So we maintained the integrity and tried to infuse some of those eligible content standards in there. And I have reviewed all of that. So to the degree that we can, we are in 7th grade. Geometry wasn't as difficult. We were able to infuse more of the eligible content skills into to the geometry course. So while I'm an 8th grader and I might be taking 8th grade math and I'm getting all those, I'm getting that, my counterpart who's taking geometry isn't. Now that those students will also have some exposure to get the students to be able to be more successful on that particular exam. So that's really the differential when we look at those scores between ELA and math in middle schools.
Are we the only district that moves the algebra and geometry to the middle school?
No.
Because
no.
I would think,
that's pretty common. It's very common. In middle schools, that's why you'll see across the state, the middle school math scores are just not strong. And it's because the students aren't taking those courses. They're advanced. So it looks like they're not doing well because the PSSA is telling us, oh, well, they're not doing well in that. They're taking higher level courses than that.
But that happens in other districts?
It happens most districts. I had a conversation, right before the holidays with Lower Merion School District who's trying to do the same thing. I'm like, oh, that's what we just did. And they're like, well, we're doing that. Like everyone's trying to, because it gives a false impression to the community that these students are poor math students. These are students who are in 8th grade taking geometry and it looks like they're not advanced, and they are. So it's a dilemma, and we're doing the very best we can, and not just us. Most districts have done, and that's why you'll see a discrepancy, but in no way, shape, or form is it that we don't have high-performing math students at the middle school, because we do.
Can I reinforce what you were just saying? A lot of the students who are in the Algebra 1 course are taking the Keystone exam that corresponds to that course, and they're scoring advanced on the Keystone exam.
That's a good point.
And yet they might be proficient on the PSSA. And it's just because there's a different skill set, a different content. So they're covering the eligible content for the Keystone exam and just flying by, as advanced as we would anticipate they would be. And yet the structure of the PSSA exam is different enough that, they're not scoring at the same level, per se. At least not every single student.
Well, then would you say that those skills that are not being, well, let's say that they're being skipped over to go to algebra and geometry, I don't know what those skills are, so I don't know if they're valuable, and the loss of that content has a downside to it. I can look and see where we are with our scores compared to other Bucks County 8th graders from other districts. Out of about 30 schools, our highest ranking school comes in at number 20. The next one is 21, and the one after that is 24. And that's why it's interesting that if the other districts are also moving algebra and geometry into the middle school level, as we are, that we would, possibly be a little bit higher on the scale. I'm not trying to be critical, but it just concerns me that I think math is so important. I know that math has a lot of the higher, well, let's just be honest, they have some of the higher paying careers. If you're better at math and science, then I'm sorry, but that's just how it works. But I get concerned that I'm not hearing any program improvements about math when it appears to me that compared to other districts, we're on the low side. And I just, if it's taking us 2 years to implement this program and that program, and we're coming in number 20, 21, and 24 out of 30, as a program improvement, I just think math is important. And that's all I'm going to say.
If I could just make a comment, we had program improvement in middle school math for 2 years.
And we talked about it at the time when those changes were made to the middle school math, and the algebra was supposed to become more rigorous, that we would revisit it to see how well that was going.
I remember that conversation, and I remember that it was coming at a sacrifice potentially of our PSSA scores. But if I'm hearing that other districts are making that same choice, if they were not making that choice and their content was strictly PSSA related, then, okay, they should do better on the PSSA test than what we're doing. But I was just now told that the other districts are putting algebra and geometry in the lower middle school grades as well, at more or less the same rate. So then I would think that we would be maybe scattered around, I mean, maybe, you know, but not, we're in the bottom third.
But two things are going on. Is that what you're going to say?
No, you go ahead.
When I started, I said two things were going on. And one was, we needed to revamp our entire middle school program. So you can't you're not measuring apples to apples. So all the different districts could be in all different places, and they may have already revamped their middle school courses, 6, 7, and 8. Well, we just did that. And now we're ensuring, to the degree, again, as I said, possible that we infuse some, what I'm really talking about, with the infusion of eligible content per grade level PSSA math into the algebra and geometry courses. I've had discussions with other districts. They're trying to do the same thing. They may not have been in the same place we were, where we had to go through changes of our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math.
And
So I know
what
it
year did
doesn't
we do
take,
that?
I'm sorry.
What year did we do that? I'm
La-
sorry.
Last year we had, so that was our first year of implementation of, but it was the year before with the program improvement proposal. But we went through that, so now we're on the second year. So it takes time. We didn't expect it all to be where we wanted to be in that 1 year. So that's why ours is twofold, and I really do, districts are all over the place. But my point was, most middle schools, unless I'm wrong, but to my knowledge, middle schools offer algebra to students and they offer geometry to their students. But we're not all in the same place. So it may not look like the best scores, and believe you me, I know they're not the best scores. But we believe that between those two implementations that we talked about, that they will improve. They are aligned. 6th grade curriculum was not aligned to the PA standards. They weren't, it just wasn't. But it is now. So you'll have that solid base in 6th grade. You'll have some students taking completely grade 7, grade 8 math, fully aligned. And then you'll have your really high achieving students who look like they're not doing that well, who do very well in the Keystone, but they're not giving you the advanced scores that we like to see, because they're the ones who typically can do it. We're giving them that extra instruction to help move them in that direction. So we're not all at the same place across the county, and we're certainly on it across the state.
So, yeah, I would just sum up by saying that it is something that's being continually looked at. I've talked to Dr. Bolton, and I hate to put a lot of pressure on him, but he's the math, math. I think of him as the math guy, so, it is something that I still have up here and waiting to see how it all pans out, and then,
So this will be year 3? The 2002.
This
the
is
second
2.
full year, because this is my 3rd year on the board, and so it wasn't my first year that it was, so it has to be only like maybe 2.
This is 2.
Stuff runs together, but.
I see.
It's 1 for 8, but it's 2 for 6 and 7.
So I had a conversation with a board member from Quakertown School District, and they were talking about how they did studies on their scores because their high school scores were low, but their elementary scores were high. And so they were, they kept concentrating on fixing the problems at the high school level. And through all of their studies, what they found out was that the problem was actually at the elementary level. The kids were doing well enough to excel on the PSSAs for the content that they needed at that level, but they weren't being given the skills that they needed to build on to be successful at the high school level. And so it was actually the changes that they ended up making to the elementary school that then carried through to the secondary level. So, something else to kind of think about. And when we're talking about redoing our writing and reading curriculum, I think that is we're in a pretty similar situation, right? Where our elementary scores were decent and our high school scores were lower. And, you know, I'm anxious to see how much of a difference this program makes in that as they carry through.
They're really, for us, it's curriculum. A lot of this is the curriculum. That's why we really needed to get into the middle schools and change that. The elementary, we had a huge program improvement proposal for our elementary schools. What's that, 3 years ago, Dr. Yarnell?
3 or 4.
3 or 4 years ago, to move to everyday math 4, and we had full implementation and training of that. So that's kind of steady. So I think we're in a good place there. It was really middle school.
So, since we adjourned the meeting, and this was just public comment, maybe we can, you know, have a discussion about it again at another meeting. If we wanna look at some different, I was curious, I have some thoughts on analyzing the students and the performance, but, you know, since we already adjourned, I think we should probably move on for now.
Thank you.
But it's good stuff to think about.
Absolutely.
Personnel's next, but I guess we can take a minute break if anybody needs to get up and stretch, there's not much.
I'm
on
mindful.
there.